Okay, this next video is on slope, all the different ways that you might be asked to find the slope of a line. And the slope of the line is asking how steep is this line? Is it going from low to high or high to low? Is it a flat line or a cliff kind of thing, straight up and down? And if it's starting low and going high, we're expecting a positive number. If it's going high and going low, going down, we're expecting a negative number. If it's a flat line, it's zero. The slope is zero. And if it's a straight up and down line, we'd say that is not even defined as a slope. Because think about slope. You snow ski in the slopes, right? You can snow ski on this hill. You can snow ski on this hill. You can cross country ski on this line. But this, no one would ski on. It's a cliff. So it's not even defined as a slope. We call it undefined because you couldn't ski on it. And basically, there's a mathematical reason that's called undefined also, but that's how my brain holds on to what slope is. So slope is telling you the steepness of the line. It's basically what we call rise over run. If you're into roofing, you call it pitch. But it's it's the directions of, let's say there's a point here and a point here. It's the directions of how to get to each point, like go up 3 and over 4. Or if I was on this line, you might say you had to go over 2 and down 5. So it's a description, and it's not a location. It's not a point on the graph like we've been doing. Slope tells you how to get from one point to another, how to change your set of coordinates to get to the next set of coordinates. And so we're going to be using this slope formula right here. It's called y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Basically, it's the change in y and how did the x's change, the changes of x. When we talk about the sets of coordinates, how did the x value change to get to here? How did the y value change to get to here? So this is the formula that we use to do that. So the first way I think that they usually start you off with finding slope, there's I think 4 or 5 different ways that we can do this. So the first way they would show you a graph, they'd say find the slope, and here's a line on a graph, and they're saying, hey, find the slope. Well, we first need to identify 2 sets of coordinates, because that's what you're seeing here, the x and the y. We need 2 sets of coordinates to use the formula. And it doesn't matter which set is your first set or which set is your second set. You just decide it. The math will work out okay either way. But that's what these little 2's mean and the 1's mean. They're not exponents. They're sitting down low. They're called subscript. And that means the y from the second set, the y from the first set, the x from the second set, the x from the first set. And also notice this is upside down. You have to be super careful because it's so easy to switch them around the other way. Because we know in our sets of coordinates, the x comes first. But in slope equation, the y comes on top. And we work on it there. So when you are working on this, you need to find your 2 sets of coordinates. And so we want to identify this set, and we want to identify this set. And again, it does not matter which one you make your first set or which one you make your second set. So if I'm going to identify this spot, I have to tell how far over on the x it took me to get there. It's where the crosshairs would meet if we had it. So it's at 4 on the x and at 1 on the y is what it was lined up with. So 4 and 1. And then this one, you go over 2 and you go up 2 to get to this spot. So it's at 2 and 2. So now when you have your first set of coordinates, your first 2 sets of coordinates, now we can use this formula. And I didn't do any negative numbers in this particular problem, but I will tell you that negative numbers work, but we tend to mess up the problem a little bit because it's subtracting negatives. So please use your calculator. The other thing I do is I put some parentheses in here, because especially if you have negative numbers, it just helps you separate with your eye the negative from a number and the subtraction sign that's in the formula, because you have to have those subtraction signs. So the y from the second set is the first number I'm going to put up here. Y from the second set is a 2. And I'm going to subtract the y from the first set. And then on the bottom, the x from the second set, right there, and subtract the x from the first set. And so just do the math, and 2 minus 1, of course, is 1, and 2 minus 4 is a negative 2. Now, we can't leave this negative in the denominator of a fraction, so if we wrote it off to the side, that means the same thing, and if we put it just onto the top number, it means the same thing. When negatives are written on a fraction off to the side, it does not mean that both numbers are negative. It means that either one could be negative at different times. Like here the bottom one's negative and here the top one's negative. So this negative means that only one number is negative. I always say if you only see one negative, you've only got one negative. So these three fractions mean the same thing, but fractions are real finicky. You're not allowed to leave it on the bottom, even though it means the same thing. We have to either put it to the side or put it on the top. So our slope for this particular line, now remember up here I said if you start high and go low, it's going to be a negative slope, and this one did. It started high and it went low as you're reading it left to right. And so we needed to expect it to be a negative. So that worked out really well. Negative 1/2 is our slope. And what that means is to get from one dot to the other, you go down 1 and over 2. Or you could say go up 1 and back 2. And that means you're going to do that to get to any point on this line. So I could go up 1 and over 2, and I would land on the line. Up 1, over 2, and I land on the line. Or down 1 over 2, and I land on the line. Down 1 over 2, and I land on the line. That's the directions of how to get from one point to another on a line. That's the definition of slope. Now the second way that we might find slope is they don't put it on a graph, but they just give us the two sets of coordinates. So we don't have to look for them on the graph, they just give them to us. And so we again use the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we'll set up our fraction line, we'll put our subtraction sign in there, and I'm going to put parentheses because I do have some negative numbers and I want to make sure I don't accidentally mistake the subtraction sign for the negative. So again, doesn't matter which set is your first set or which set is your second set, you just make the decision. This one up here, if we had switched these around, how the answer would have come out, instead of 1 over negative 2, it would have been negative 1 over positive 2. So it still would have given the same answer. So here the same thing would happen. If you decided to switch them around the other way, you could. All right, so here we go. Second y minus the first y. Second x minus the first x. And then do the math. We have negative 7 over negative 8. Okay, well, fractions are division, so negative divided by a negative is a positive. So negative 7 over negative 8 is the same as positive 7 over positive 8. And remember, just like up here, you can't have a negative in the bottom, so you need to rewrite it. Since both numbers are negative, just rewrite it as a positive. The slope is 7 over 8. And that means if it was on a graph, the line was on a graph, it would be a positive one, starting low, going high, and it would say, you know, to get from one point to another, it would say go up 7 and over 8, up 7 and over 8, and you would continually find points on that line. The third way is they give you an equation. This is called a slope intercept equation because it says y equals, where the y is by itself. And in this type of equation, we call this y equals mx plus b. In this type of equation, there's always a number in for the m value, and there's a number in there for the b value. And the m value is your slope. And up here when I showed you the slope formula, it said m equals, and then it said y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. So